Today we will see a result of Fermat which says that if P is a prime which is congruent to 1 mod 4, then P can be written as sum of 2 squares. An example is, if you take 5 which is a prime 1 mod 4, we can write it as 1 square plus 2 square. If you take 13, you can write it as 2 square plus 3 square. Whereas if you take 7 which is a prime of the form 3 mod 4, then the squares available for 7 are 1 square and 2 square. And if you want to use these, you cannot get 7 as a sum of 2 squares. What you require is 4 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. 7 in fact requires 4 squares. So Fermat gave a criterion which numbers can be written as sums of 2 squares, that we will see. So the first result that we shall see is that if P is a prime congruent to 1 mod 4, then there are integers, we can say positive integers a and b, okay, which we can take positive, such that P equal to a square plus b square, P equal to a square plus b square. The technique for this is the solution for the congruence x square congruent to minus 1 mod p. If P is congruent to 1 mod 4, we know that the congruence x square congruent to minus 1 mod p has a solution. So we shall use, we can say this is lemma now. If P congruent to 1 mod 4, P prime, then the congruence x square congruent to minus 1 mod p has a solution. So this we got by using Wilson's theorem. P minus 1 factorial is congruent to minus 1 mod p, that is what we know, and if P congruent to 1 mod 4, you can combine 1 and P minus 1, 2 and P minus 2 and so on, and by that we get P minus 1 factorial square is congruent to minus 1 mod p. So you get a solution of this congruence that we shall be using now. So proof, what we know is you take capital K to be integral part of root of p, integral part of root of p, and take a solution of this congruence. So suppose x is a solution to x square congruent to minus 1 mod p. One solution you take, call it as x. Now consider the following numbers. Let us say f of uv is equal to u plus x times v, where u and v, they vary over the set of integers from 0 to k. So, 0 less than equal to uv less than equal to capital K. Now, we have the value of k, and from that we get how many pairs uv are there satisfying this condition. So, here this k is capital K equal to integral part of root of p, and therefore, k is less than or equal to root of p, but we can take it less than and less than k plus 1. The integral part is the largest integer less than equal to the given number. So, we have k less than equal to root p less than k plus 1, and therefore, you can say k square is less than p less than k plus 1 square. Okay. Now, these numbers we have k plus 1 actually. U takes k plus 1 value 0 to k. So, u and v take k plus 1 values each from 0 to k. So, if you have pairs, so we get k plus 1 square pairs uv, and this number k plus 1 square is bigger than p, that is what we have, and k plus 1 square bigger than p. Now, we shall use a well known principle in combinatorics, which is called as pigeonhole principle. So, this is also called Dirichlet's box principle. And this says the following: suppose we have n plus 1 objects, you may call them as pigeons, and there are n boxes. These are boxes or holes. For example, we have 11 objects or 11 pigeons, and there are 10 boxes or 10 holes. Now, if these pigeons want to go into these holes, then at least one of the holes will contain 2 or more pigeons. Okay. That is the pigeonhole principle. Because if that does not happen, suppose we have that every box can contain only at most one pigeon, then the total number of pigeons that can be accommodated in these n boxes is at most n. You cannot accommodate n plus 1 there. Okay. So, n plus 1 objects distributed in n boxes, or you talk in terms of pigeons, n plus 1 pigeons or more pigeons are there, they are distributed in these n holes, then one of the holes contains at least 2 pigeons. Now, similar situation we have here. So, we have k plus 1 square possibilities for these pairs, Now each pair uv gives rise to some value of f of uv. F of uv is u plus x times v, and we have corresponding to every pair uv an integer f uv. Now you get k plus 1 square integers from these k plus 1 square pairs, and now if you take any complete residue system mod p, that complete residue system, for example 0 to p minus 1, then each of these numbers f uv is congruent to one and only one of these members of the complete residue system. Okay. Each f uv is congruent to one and only one member from any complete residue system. Complete residue system has p elements. Our values f uv, they are how many? K plus 1 square, which is bigger than p. That means by the pigeonhole principle, there will be two pairs, say u1 v1 and u2 v2, such that f u1 v1 and f u2 v2, they should correspond to the same number from the complete residue system. Correspond to means they should be congruent. So that is how we use the pigeonhole principle. From the k plus 1 square pairs uv, we get k plus 1 square integers f of uv equal to u plus x times v. Since k plus 1 square bigger than p in, if you take elements from a complete residue system and any CRS mod p, for example 0, 1, etc. up to p minus 1 has p elements, okay, and each of them is congruent to one of the members of the CRS, and since each integer is congruent mod p to one and only one element from a CRS mod p. Okay. So these elements of CRS you can consider it as holes, and these integers f uv, they are pigeons. Which pigeon will go to which hole, that we know, that f of uv we should correspond to that element in the CRS to which f uv is congruent modulo p. Okay, so we have where which pigeon will go where, that is also now known, but number of pigeons, that is number of these integers f uv is more than p. Therefore, there should be two f uv which should be congruent to the same number. Okay. So there are different values u1 v1 and u2 v2 for which the corresponding values of f are congruent mod p. Therefore, there are pairs u1 v1 and u2 v2 such that u1 v1, the pair u1 v1 is not equal to the pair u2 v2. That means either u1 is not equal to u2 or v1 not equal to v2 or both. So there are pairs such that if u1 v1 is congruent to f u2 v2 mod p. That is, now u1 plus x times v1 is congruent to u2 plus x times v2. So this is what happens, mod p. Therefore, u1 minus u2 is equal to x times v2 minus v1. This is congruent mod p. And now we shall be getting a solution to p equal to a square plus b square from this. Let us see how we get that. So square both sides, squaring u1 minus u2 square congruent to x square into v2 minus v1 square mod p. Mod p. Now, what is x square? We know that x square is congruent to minus 1 mod p. We have chosen x with that property. If you put it here and take these terms on the left hand side, you get u1 minus u2 square plus v2 minus v1 square, that is congruent to 0 mod p. And now, so 0 mod p means divisible by p. This is a non-negative quantity. It can be 0, it can be p, it can be 2p, like that. It is a multiple of p. This quantity is a multiple of p. Now, what can you say about these quantities? u1 and u2, they are numbers between 0 and capital K. Okay. So, the absolute difference between them is less than or equal to capital K, and therefore, this square of this is less than k square and k square is less than p. So, that is what we shall use now. Now, mod of, so u1 u2, 0 less than or equal to u1 u2 less than or equal to capital K, and capital K is integral part of root of p, which is less than p. Therefore, the distance between this and this, that is mod of u1 minus u2, is less than or equal to distance between this and this, that is k, less than or equal to k, and k is less than this root of p. I should write here root of p. See, root of p is not an integer, therefore, the integral part is strictly less than root p, and therefore, I should write here root of p. Now, you take square of this, which is u1 minus u2 square, and that is less than p. u1 minus u2 square is less than p. In a similar manner, if you take v1 and v2, same argument, so v1 minus v2 square is less than p. Similarly, v1 minus v2 square is also less than p. Also, the pairs u1 v1 and u2 v2, they were unequal pairs. So, either u1 not equal to u2 or v1 not equal to v2, and that would mean that u1 minus u2 square, that is bigger than 0, or v1 minus v2 square, that is bigger than 0. Okay. Since u1 v1 not equal to u2 v2 either u1 not equal to u2 or v1 not equal to v2 or both. Mathematical, see, or is mathematical or, that means A or B means A happens or B happens or both happen, like that. And therefore u1 minus u2 square plus v1 minus v2 square, that is v2 minus v1 square, that is bigger than 0. Also u1 minus u2 square plus v1 minus v2 square is less than p plus p, that is equal to 2p. Here we have seen that u1 minus u2 square is less than p. This is u1 minus v2 square is less than p. So this quantity is less than 2p. Now you have got the result that this quantity is bigger than p and it is less than 2p. On the contrary, we have seen that this quantity is congruent to 0 mod p. Okay? That is, here you have seen that u1 minus u2 square plus v2 minus v1 square is congruent to 0 mod p, means it is divisible by p. Okay. So now u1 minus u2 square plus v1 minus v2 square is congruent to 0 mod p. If it is congruent to 0 mod p, then what can it be? Divisible by it is p, 2p, like that, but it cannot be 2p or more, because it is less than 2p already. Also it is bigger than 0, so it has to be p. Okay? That is the only thing left. Therefore u1 minus u2 square plus v1 minus v2 square must be equal to p. That is what you wanted. You wanted p equal to something square plus something square, a square plus b square. So take a equal to mod of u1 minus u2, b equal to mod of v1 minus v2. Therefore p equal to a square plus b square. A, b positive integers. So we have used two things here, pigeonhole principle, and we have also used that the congruence x square congruent to minus 1 mod p has a solution. So see that solutions of congruences are in this fashion very useful to get results about integers. P equal to, p can be written as sum of two squares, we could say here, because of this result about congruences. And as we have noted earlier, that let me recall that if n congruent to 3 mod 4, n cannot be written as a sum of two squares. And the reason for that is you try to write n equal to a square plus b square. Okay. Suppose it happens, then what is this a square? It is 0 or 1 mod 4 plus b square is 0 or 1 mod 4, and this is n is 3 mod 4. If this is true, then 3 should be congruent to this sum, that is 0 plus 0 or 0 plus 1 or 1 plus 0 or 1 plus 1. But this right hand side is never 3 mod 4. It is either 0 or 1 or 2 mod 4. That means this is not possible. N congruent to 3 mod 4 is not possible. Now to get Fermat's result, we have this lemma . This lemma will say that if Q is a divisor of a square plus b square. So we are studying numbers of the type a square plus b square, and suppose q is a prime which divides a square plus b square, then q will divide each of a and b. If q divides a square plus b square, then q will divide a and q will also divide b. That is the result that we want. Here we are assuming that q is a prime of the form 4k plus 3. So let q be a prime congruent to 3 mod 4. Suppose q divides a square plus b square. Then q divides a and q divides b. Q divides a and q divides b. Like what happens for primes of the form 1 mod 4? See, if you just take p equal to 5, and 5 can be written as 1 square plus 2 square. So 5 divides the sum of these two. 5 is exactly equal to, so it divides. But it doesn't divide 1 and it doesn't divide 2. So this thing is not true for 1 mod 4 primes, but primes of the form 3 mod 4 have this property. And this property we shall use in the theorem of Fermat. Fermat classified all integers which can be written as sums of 2 squares, and he used this lemma in that. So proof of this: so suppose q does not divide a, then what happens? Okay. Suppose q does not divide a. Now a square plus b square congruent to 0 mod q. A square plus b square is divisible by q. This a square, which is not divisible by q, we take to the right hand side. Therefore, b square is congruent to minus a square mod q. Now we shall use one result that again the congruence x square congruent to minus 1 mod p is a prime, suppose. When does it have solution? So it has solution when p is equal to 2 or p is 1 mod 4, but it does not have solution if p is congruent to 3 mod 4. X square congruent to minus 1 mod p does not have solution if p is congruent to 3 mod 4. That is what we shall be using. Now you take the inverse of a mod q. Suppose the inverse is a bar. Inverse is such that, see, q does not divide a, that is q is coprime, see, a and q they are coprime. If a is coprime to q, inverse of a mod q we can think of. It is some number integer a bar such that a bar is congruent to 1 mod q. So since a q equal to 1, there is an integer a bar such that a bar congruent to 1 mod q. A bar is congruent to 1 mod q. In the study of congruences, this was a simple congruence that we have studied. Ax congruent to 1 mod m. If A is coprime to m, Ax congruent to 1 mod m has a solution, and that solution is unique mod m. That's what. So that's what we are using here. Aq equal to 1, so you get an integer a bar such that a bar congruent to 1 mod q. Now both sides you multiply by a bar square. Multiply both sides by a bar square. Therefore, we get b a bar square congruent to minus of a bar square mod q congruent to minus 1 mod q. And that gives the solution to x square congruent to minus 1 mod q. Okay. Therefore, x square congruent to minus 1 mod q has a solution. What is that solution? B a bar, that is a solution. Now, because this congruence has a solution, what can you say about q? So, we can say okay, q has to be 1 mod 4, then only a solution is possible, whereas we know that q is 3 mod 4. So, that means this is a contradiction. As q is congruent to 3 mod 4, right. For q congruent to 3 mod 4, this equation cannot have solution. This has solution if and only if either q is 2 or 1 mod 4. The contradiction tells us that the assumption q does not divide a, that is wrong, and therefore q divides a. And q divides a, either we can say similarly q divides b, or we can say that a square plus b square is congruent to 0 mod q, and q divides this a. Therefore, q divides b square also. So, q divides b. Therefore, q divides b square, and therefore, q divides b. So, q divides both a and b. That proves the lemma. So, in the lemma we started with q divides, suppose q does not divide one of them, let us say a, then you get a contradiction, therefore q has to divide a, therefore q divides b also, and that is the lemma, and this we shall use in the result of Fermat. So, he proved the following theorem. So, Fermat is 1601 to 1665. The theorem is, when can a positive integer be written as a sum of two squares? The criteria is that look at the prime factors of the positive integer. Now, 2 is allowed in that. 2 is allowed to be a factor of such a number. Primes of the form 4k plus 1, they are allowed, and if a prime of the form 4k plus 3 is dividing the number, then it should divide with even power. That is the requirement. So, let n be a positive integer, write the canonical factorization n equal to 2 raised to alpha product pi. These are primes of the form 1 mod 4. 1 mod 4, and you can take power beta I here, and then you write primes of the form 3 mod 4. So let us write them as Qi, Qj, Qj congruent to 3 mod 4 raised to gamma j, 2 raised to alpha, product Pi raised to beta I, product Qj raised to gamma j. These are finitely many primes. These are finitely many primes in the canonical factorization. So the canonical factorization means the factorization of n into products of prime powers, where all these powers usually we write to be positive powers. Those primes which appear, they only are written here, because sometimes you can also write primes which are not appearing with power 0, is also possible, but here we write with positive powers. Now in this factorization, if you want n to be a sum of 2 squares, then the requirement is each gamma j is even. So these primes of the form 3 mod 4, they appear in the canonical factorization of n with even powers. Okay. Then n is a sum of 2 squares if and only if each gamma j in the factorization, canonical factorization of n is even. In other words, the primes of the form 4k plus 3 which appear in the canonical factorization of n appear with even power. They cannot occur singly, because they are the obstructions. They themselves cannot be written as sums of 2 squares. Q of the form 4k plus 3 you cannot write as a sum of 2 squares. If you have square of that number, then certainly square, q square, that is itself you can write as sum of 2 squares, in the sense q square plus 0 square is allowed. Q square plus 0 square. We don't say that it has to be sum of 2 positive squares. You don't require that in this theorem. So for the proof of this, first of all you note that all these numbers can be written as sums of 2 squares, numbers with this property, and there we use a simple identity which you can get, for example, from complex numbers, or you can have that as an algebraic identity. So the identity is the following. We have the algebraic identity. The identity is a square plus b square multiplied by c square plus d square is equal to AD minus BC bracket square plus AC plus BD bracket square. The advantage of this identity is that if you have a sum of 2 squares multiplied by a sum of 2 squares, then you can write this as sum of 2 squares. product of two numbers which are sums of two squares is also a sum of two squares. That is the advantage of this identity. This is true for real numbers, complex numbers, this is true for integers in particular, and for integers we shall be using it. The proof is obvious, because if you just expand both sides, you will see that left hand side is equal to right hand side. See, a square c square, that is here, ac square, b square d square, that is there, a square d square, that is in this, b square c square is here, and these are 4 terms here, whereas here there are 6 terms, but the middle terms get cancelled, minus 2 ABCD and plus 2 ABCD, that gets cancelled. So this is true. So product of sum of two squares, so this gives that product of two integers which are sums of two squares is also a sum of two squares. Now, you call this as 1, write n as 2 raised to something into product of pi raised to beta I into product of qj raised to gamma j. Now 2 can be written as sum of two squares. So now 2 equal to 1 square plus 1 square. So any power of 2 will certainly be a sum of two squares because of that result. Okay. A prime of the form 1 mod 4 is also a sum of two squares. If P is a prime congruent to 1 mod 4, then P is a sum of two squares, that is known to us. Also, if you take gamma j as even, then you already have a square. So if gamma j or gamma, let us say, is even, q raised to gamma is a square. Q raised to gamma is a square. Here in particular we can take q congruent to 3 mod 4, but for any number q raised to gamma will be a square if gamma is even. Therefore, the quantity in 1, 2 raised to alpha is going to be a square. This is a sum of two squares. This is a sum of two squares. This is also a sum of two squares. Product is a sum of two squares, and you multiply by a square. This product qj raised to gamma j is going to be a square. So this whole thing is sum of two squares. Okay. Sum of two squares you multiply by a square, that is also sum of two squares. So hence from 1 a positive integer n as given in 1 is a sum of two squares. Now the only condition here is that if n is sum of two squares, we require that these gammas they should be even. That is the only requirement. So let us prove that thing. Next, suppose n is a positive integer which is a sum of two squares. Suppose Q is a prime of the form 4k plus 3 which divides n. Suppose Q is a prime of the form 4k plus 3, that is Q is congruent to 3 mod 4, such that Q is a factor of n, Q divides n. Now, if Q divides n, then write n as sum of two squares, say a square plus b square. Write n equal to a square plus b square. Since Q divides n and Q is 3 mod 4, by the lemma what should happen? Q divides both A and B. We have by lemma Q divides A and Q divides B. Okay. Therefore, Q square divides A square plus B square, because Q square divides A square, Q square divides B square, so Q square divides the sum, that is Q square divides the number n, therefore Q square divides n. Now, n upon Q square divides n, so this is a number integer which can be written as A upon Q square plus B upon Q square equal to sum of two squares. This integer n upon Q square is a sum of squares of two integers. Now, we don't know whether Q divides n by Q square or not, but if n by Q square is divisible by Q, again what should happen? This A by Q should be divisible by Q, B by Q should be divisible by Q, therefore again right hand side is divisible by Q square, therefore this number is divisible by Q square. Then you divide it by Q square and go ahead. If that is divisible by Q, it should be divisible by Q square. This is because Q is a prime of the form 4k plus 3. So again, if Q divides n by Q square, then Q square must divide it. And you continue this process. We continue this process. Every time you get numbers which are divisible by smaller power of Q, n by Q square, divisible by smaller power of q. Then you get n by q raised to 4. It is divisible by still smaller power of q. Ultimately, this process has to stop. Ultimately, you get just q remaining there, and if q divides, so either q should be there or 1 should be there at the end. If q is there, then q square should be there as a factor. That is not possible at the end. So, this process must stop with some even power of q dividing n. The conclusion would be that some even power of q must divide n. So, finally, we see that n must be divisible by an even power of q. If q is divisible by odd power, if n is divisible by an odd power of q exactly, this is exactly. That means the exponent of that power of q in the factorization of n, that exponent must be even. So, if n is divisible by an odd power of q exactly, that is q raised to gamma exactly divides n with gamma odd, then what will happen in that case? Then going down, you get a stage where you get a number which is sum of two squares. That number is divisible by q but not by q square, because every time you are getting new numbers where the power of q is decreasing by 2 every time. So, at one stage there will be a number which is sum of two squares, then after a few steps we get an integer which is a sum of two squares and such that q divides it, but q square does not divide it. That is a contradiction to the lemma. This is a contradiction to the lemma. I mean, see that suppose n is q raised to that gamma is say 2s plus 1 times some n1, then what will happen? N is sum of two squares, every time you divide by q square, so ultimately we get n by q raised to 2s, that is q times n1. N1 is the part which is free from q, n1 is the part free from q. So, n by q raised to 2s is q times n1, it is divisible by q but not by q square. That happens. Such a thing should not happen. This is a contradiction. Okay, that is in symbols we can write like this. So, this proves that the power of q that is appearing in the canonical factorization of n must be even power. Okay. and that proves the result of Fermat. And there are other interesting theorems. After this, Weddings had conjectured that every positive integer is sum of 4 squares, and that result was proved by Lagrange. That is called Lagrange's 4 square theorem, that every positive integer is a sum of 4 squares. Here remember, when you say sum of 4 squares, 0 square is allowed in that. If you do not want to use 0, then you have to say every positive integer is sum of at most 4 squares.